So, hi everyone. I'm here with Rob Tyrrell today. He's the co-founder of Haboo Money, and you're sort of in this sort of like flexible kind of payment space, and that's particularly around repayments, I think, as well for collections firms. I've been trying to like, put in monitored infrastructure around payments. So, thanks very much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
No, happy to be here.
So what are you seeing, I suppose, in terms of repayments and some of the frustrations that people have? I know because I know we're into this sort of new world around employment, aren't we? I mean, a lot of us still get paid monthly. Some of us still get paid weekly or bi-weekly, but there's a lot of also like a lot more sort of like flexible kind of arrangements that are going on there, which sort of leads to quite a lumpy kind of payment flow. What are you seeing?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really, I guess, the changing face of the consumer is why we've built this business. We recognise that we are seeing record numbers of people earning in a manner that isn't your traditional, 12 or 13 income moments in the year, and what that means for people is money management is even more challenging. You've got multiple outgoings. The reliance on credit is greater than ever. And now we're seeing, credit costs increasing, and that's causing pressure on, every borrower out there. What we've seen in the market is there's been a huge amount of innovation on the distribution of credit, and actually collections, and the long relationship you have with that customer after the loan or credit product is distributed has actually been pretty under innovated. It's still typically a one size fits all static approach to collections, and we believe that by building our personalized repayment experience that lenders and credit providers can use off the shelf, we're providing them with a new value proposition to give to their customers, which for them decreases the risk of missed or late payments, and also actually improves the number of good customer outcomes for the range of customers, both prime and into subprime.
I mean, how does I suppose, the flexibility around payments, or I mean, because that was always an issue, wasn't it? Around,
Yep.
the fact that there were fixed billing dates and sort of like, and it was like it was very kind of rigid. Even moving the billing dates used to be difficult with old legacy systems. But
Yeah.
how much do you think having this kind of flexibility in the system, in the process, makes products, I suppose, brands more sticky for customers? I'm thinking particularly around repayment arrangements, for example. How do you
Yeah,
make that more
absolutely.
sticky? How does the flexibility make it more sticky?
So it's flexibility in conjunction with a great digital experience. So we match that up with a set of self-service tools, so that we're giving people the control over how they repay, and we do all the orchestration in the back end, so that the credit provider gets their one monthly payment, and their finance systems don't explode from the complexity. And so, I think there's a general misunderstanding of the consumer, which is, they're bad with money, they don't have it, or whatever it might be. What we found from our live customers is they know better than anyone when they're going to earn, how much they're going to have left over at the end of every month, and actually they don't want to be calling up. They don't want to be relying on the old method of customer service. It's actually notify me of what I need to do, give me the tools to do it, and I will do it in my own time. And so we see an enormous amount of traffic outside of the typical 9 to 5 office hours. Mainly probably because that fits around whatever their job is, whatever their family, their home life looks like. And so really it's actually trying to understand and fit in with what's their personal financial situation, and cater for them at scale, which is what no one's able to do today.
And then do you find that people like to sort of, because we were sold this, the roundup feature you have on a lot of like a bank apps. I mean, I love that,
Yeah,
and a lot of people also have lots of different pots. So when you do open banking, you often see people have lots of different accounts. These almost like it's a jam jar accounting, isn't it?
that's
I think it's
exactly it.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you find that that's sort of like, I mean, but people seem to, that's been popular. I mean, so that's kind of like a popular way of doing it, which often the modern infrastructure or the old infrastructure didn't really allow us to do, because you had separate relationships every single month, and they were sort of like, you were having to manage around that, weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, we're seeing great uptake on we're calling it a kind of a save as you repay wallet, and it gives you that dedicated space to put funds aside for potentially future months. A great example is one of our very first customers was a single working mother, works for Amazon. I don't know which part of the business, but actually typically worked 10 out of 12 months and was struggling in that summer period and around Christmas
Mm.
on those loan repayments. And she was one of the first people to take out the products with our first pilot. And effectively, when the sun was shining, she actually overpaid in the months where she was working and kind of getting overtime, which actually then allowed her to either pay it off early or just spread it over the 12, all in a very simple experience where it doesn't take a special requirement, because we actually just orchestrate the payment to go. The other interesting thing that we see is customers actually, they get put on a repayment plan of, 25 quid a week, for their £100 requirement, but actually that they'll, they can turn it up to £30 a week, and you're creating, £20 £20 as a rainy day fund each and every month. And that leads to two outcomes. One, if there is an income shock, they are actually protected to a degree because they've been doing that kind of prudent micro saving, or they get to near the end of their term and they can end it early. And so that's there's a win-win there in terms of the cost of credit piece as well, which we're starting to influence.
There's an interesting kind of dynamic there from a customer point of view around sort of they're much more in control, and I suppose that feeling in control, isn't there, versus being having to do what the firm is telling you to do, I suppose, to a certain
It,
extent.
it,
Do you find that, does that come across?
Totally, it changes the dialogue between the customer care teams and the customer themselves, because actually you're effectively giving them autonomy with guardrails in place, so that minor changes don't become a phone call and then an explanation and everything that goes into it. Actually, it's just a tap of a button, and it means that you remain on track. You're continuously making progress against your credit agreement, but it's not a big deal. And crucially, you can do it at any time. So you can reverse the decision should that not be the right one, or actually you can just make multiple changes in the month. If, let's say, an invoice doesn't come in because you're self-employed, it doesn't come in, so you have to push the date out. These are all of the kind of edge cases that just mount up to a late or missed payment, and then the follow-on kind of collection issues that come out of it.
And I suppose, what do you find in terms of like your customer base, in terms of the type of people who find that attractive? I mean, because we might just think, I mean, obviously we're talking about collections, and you might be,
Yep.
people who are in collections, but it might be attracted to a wider kind of customer base as well, because sometimes it's quite surprising in terms of who you actually having
Yep.
sign up versus you don't,
Totally.
and it can be quite sort of counterintuitive versus particularly preconceived conceptions we might have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting is, we're actually, we started out supporting our lending partners with their arrears books, but actually, as our solution has proven itself to be valuable, the customers we serve have moved into being good payers again. And so actually, we're bolstering that kind of pre-arrears strategy. And so really what we're seeing is it doesn't necessarily, the customer profile you see as part of the application doesn't necessarily always fit the kind of the perfect mold of who we thought would use it. A lot of the time we see people who have probably a traditionally very good, steady income, but they supplement with things like Etsy and Vinted and eBay, kind of this, these reseller type secondary incomes. And actually they like to just put it away and know that actually, the money's in a safe space and it will be paid, rather than, I guess, necessarily the direct debit run all on the same day where rent goes, utilities go, and actually you might be caught short, or whatever it might be. So in terms of the customers we do see, the majority are absolutely those who are probably defined as gig economy, but actually the reality is we're seeing more and more people who would probably be defined as an unpredictable income, or their circumstances have changed since they took the loan out. That's probably the other really interesting piece that we're seeing.
And I suppose talk to me a little bit about, I suppose, the digital experience, because you talked about that being a differentiator, because to a
Yeah,
certain extent, current accounts are kind of what they were designed for, which was to hold the money, and then the money then goes
totally.
out at a
Yeah,
later point. And
yeah,
and it feels like we've moved away a little bit from that, and sort of because people have got either secondary accounts or they're using applications like this to be able to do that. I mean, I suppose what do you think the gap has been, and what has been missing, I suppose, in that current account infrastructure that the digital experience for you guys can sort of fill in, because that seems like that's a big part of it as well.
yeah, absolutely. And from a digital experience perspective, this is dedicated towards paying off your credit agreement. It's not, and really we have optimized the journey so it gives you the tools and the various kind of, I guess, delivers against the various use cases that any one person would want to deliver against. I suppose the fact that we've kind of got a digital wallet in the customer's name really, I guess, was born out of kind of a mistake, not a mistake, but kind of born out of uh, I guess a wider problem that we saw in the market, which was, there was no safe space for a customer to save for, a dedicated purpose. And also, a current account doesn't give visibility to the lender on an ongoing basis.
Mm.
And so, that value proposition matches up very kind of, it really resonates with our lending partners. And at the same time, customers are far more likely to commit to a more flexible approach should they be able to have the fluidity and the control over funds, right? And so, whilst everything can be managed in one location from someone's typical current account, actually the reality is that's not how people are using their money anymore. They are splitting it into different pots, and they are, leveraging, I guess, embedded savings within a kind of a credit repayment journey.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's almost like data, isn't it? So what you just said there is kind of data. So it's not just about what the balance is and sort of anticipating it. It's getting that forward view around what the balance will be over the next from creditors or from utilities or whatever it is. Being able to understand what that is and what the curve looks like, and then also then for those businesses or those firms to be able to understand will they get paid or not, I suppose, and it's being able to ring fence some of that.
That's
But it's about data, isn't it? It's about sort of exploring the data and being able to a modern infrastructure about like being able to control that.
that's exactly it. We're able to blend customer engagement data through every point of the digital journey, their transaction information, to create a pretty powerful insights proposition that from our lending partner perspective, it allows them to be proactive on their collections population. They're allowed, we're starting to generate some pretty good insights, ahead of end of month. So
Mm.
you're starting to understand where you're going to be on your from a credit risk position, and at the same time, how do we orchestrate the repayments on behalf of customers, so actually we take all of the hassle out of it. One of the things that we're working on at the moment is an open banking driven experience whereby we recognize the customer will confirm their sources of income. We'll use Deliveroo as an example, or Uber as an example, where we know they pay weekly. We will recognize that salary moment hitting your account, and we will automatically sweep a small portion of that, depending on the size of your loan, into your wallet. And then therefore, you don't even have to do anything. It is just then
Mm.
automatically, effectively, a portion of each and every income moment, so you're continuously making progress against
Mm.
your credit agreement.
Well, it's quite an interesting linkage what you're saying there to almost like pre-arrears as well. So we're talking quite a lot about what's going to happen with fuel prices as an example. As we got fuel price increases, the caps going up. Obviously we've got there's been conflict in the Gulf, which is having global impact on things like petrol prices as an example.
Yeah,
What happens with that, and how do we get prepared? So it's almost like if you can see that you're not going to get paid, do you proactively use that to go and talk to people about support options, or
that's it.
spreading payments or those kind of things, right? I mean, there's a real proactive element there.
Yeah, do you know what? I had a conversation with a large debt purchasing firm yesterday, and the CEO said exactly that. He said, we contact our customers 3, 4, 5 times in a row. We just say the same thing over and over again. Actually, we just say, please pay. what this allows you to do is actually it changes the tone of the conversation, and what we're seeing is a really high level of re-engagement, because it is ultimately a different tone of voice you're using with your customer. You're no longer mandating how they should do something. You are giving them the tool set to say how would you like to repay, and it really folds into this sustainable affordability topic that is so prevalent at the moment. We're seeing mortgage rates are going to hit record levels. We're seeing the end of the 5-year sweetheart deals from 2020, and a whole heap of people who are going to be coming into, who are probably going to change from a credit risk perspective. And this is the kind of tool that can really get on top of giving a customer a new way of doing it. And actually, kind of one of the big things we found from a recent customer survey that we've done is this probably isn't the right term, but what they're calling kind of one bill anxiety. It's that big number at the end of the month where actually, can they chip away at it, through the period? And it doesn't have to be every week. It could be, actually you just split it in half. So you pay half of the, halfway through the month, you pay 50% or whatever it might be. And actually, lenders love that, because, should you miss your second payment, that, progress is still being made against your balance, which is really where we're kind of narrowing into is how can we always support progress against balance reduction, rather than the challenge today, which is someone misses, the DD, the direct debit runs, the payment is missed, the customer feels a certain way, the communication and the engagement is shaped to make them feel a certain way, and actually that leads to a terrible outcome, because they become disengaged, they don't pay, and no one wins. Whereas actually it's how do you work with them, knowing that their circumstances have changed, ensuring that they are continually paying in a way that is both affordable and within the kind of bounds of the lending partners, I guess, kind of collection strategy or yeah.
It's very interesting. We've gone on quite an interesting journey, I think, with digitalization. I know we were chatting about digital and sort of like AI just before we started, but we've gone an interesting journey, which is way back when it used to be sort of like delaying contact until you really had to talk to people, and it was like might even be like 2 payments down, right? So I mean, if you were super low risk, and then you're having a conversation is a difficult conversation. Is like how do you then sort of collect on that, or try and recover from that, I suppose. And sort of with digital technology, because it's become so much cheaper, it's all become earlier and earlier and earlier. Now we're calling very, very quickly. We're sending emails. We've got digital apps, those kind of things. And almost what you're saying is like we can almost like go into that almost like pre-billing stage, almost like even further upstream. And this sort of extends it even further upstream. And then another interesting angle is you then got something to talk about as well. So you're talking about detail, specific personal detail, rather than I can see your bill's overdue. Tell me about it.
You're exactly right. If we see the 30th of the month being the payment date, we're actually notifying our lending partners at day 15, at day 10 of the month, with a view that actually we believe this customer is probably going to miss this month. We can see it through if the engagement data is there, where they haven't logged in, they may have missed one of their micro payments, they are ignoring the customer comms, and we're able to do that across your we can go omni-channel, so we're across SMS, email, info, notifications. You're able to start getting a really good picture very early, before even the late payment marker or the late payment is taken, that this customer is disengaged and something has potentially happened. And now, as we mature our product, we would love to deliver more value to our lending partners by triaging that problem and simply surfacing, Rob Tyrrell, this is actually they have self-reported that they're vulnerable for whatever reason, and therefore the collections agent or the customer care team can immediately address that issue, rather than having to triage it themselves back and forth on email. They're dealing with hundreds of cases at a time, and actually not kind of giving the dedicated thought it needs. Whereas we can, what we would love to be able to do is just package up that customer challenge, and therefore they can roll it straight into the appropriate strategy and deliver a good customer outcome.
I mean, the enrichment of data and sort of like personalization is definitely a theme that you can sort of see coming in. And when we were chatting earlier about APIs and API costs and all those kind of things, it's kind of like it feels like that's kind of building in terms of having much richer streams of information, and then things like tools like AI to then be able to sort of like then have personalized conversations. But it's a dramatically different kind of conversation, isn't it? If you're talking about specific things that have happened versus just generic kind of things. I mean, do you sort of like, do you see that? I mean, do you also see that kind of the direction we're kind of going? I mean, it's like it's around this personalization of discussions. It's really around, and this kind of fits into that ecosystem of having just generating much richer kind of information and for personalization as much as anything.
Yeah, the thing I really I suppose I'm passionate about with building this is creating something that is truly personal but scalable, at an enterprise scale. I think we have to be careful with AI and kind of AI-led conversations, especially in this section of the market that we're playing in. One, because we have to make sure that everything that is said is we're able to explain it to both our partners and, should anything happen in front of a regulator, right? And at the same time, actually, we think that a lot of by delivering a best-in-class set of self-service tools, we can actually we can refocus the human element of the experience, so it is just managing the high value exceptions. Obviously, I think AI, from a technology perspective, plays an enormous role in automating all of the wizardry that happens under the bonnet. But actually, I think we need to be quite careful on it being, I guess, a conversational piece when there's vulnerability involved.
But I suppose to a certain extent, this isn't actually an AI question. It's the data, and it's data. It's hard data that sits underneath. I mean, the AI piece is probably what clients might decide what to do with it in terms of what to do with the data. But it's actually APIs and gathering sort of data around that, and it's like personalized data. I mean, so I just know some of the stuff I've been doing is like we're getting into like so much more data that's available, and now we can kind of process it and can understand it, and it just feels like it's exploding in terms of like having insights we've never had before.
Yeah, our ability to ingest data points and turn it into something that is meaningful we've probably never had tools that do that so easily for us at such a scale. We're spinning up, on I guess the B2B side of our proposition. Customer care teams are screaming at us saying like we really want to understand our customer base, and so when we initially went live last year, we were very much on the consumer facing application, whereas we were very able to quickly spin up a dashboard view, so that actually we're starting to bring to life those insights in a way that is real time, that they've never had before. And something that we can kind of continuously build on, which is, I'm not the techie portion of this business, but it's truly remarkable what the team are able to do.
I mean, just talking about, I suppose, the technological leaps we seem to be taking. I mean, it seems to change every 6 months, certainly every year. I mean, and it feels like it's accelerating. I mean, do you think? And I know some of your background before and sort of in consulting as well. I mean, do you think people are really aware of like what is going to change? I mean, how's your feeling around readiness and I suppose just looking into the future around like where we can be with this stuff, and particularly around data and data analysis and some of the tools that are coming out? I mean, what's your kind of view?
I don't think we're even close to ready to what the potential and the power of these tools deliver. My personal take on this is I really think we're at the beginning of a total change in how the workforce delivers output. Really, what we're seeing is, I guess, an intro offer on all these AI tools, which is automating things that we never thought were possible in the past, and so everyone, rightly so, is reevaluating how they deliver their value proposition to the market. we're doing the same. We are constantly looking at how tools can improve our internal output and capacity and all of those kind of good things. At I suppose at an enterprise level, I think there is an enormous learning curve that people are going to have to go on to understand how to use these tools for good. And done poorly, I think we're going to have we will have a serious breach of information going into the wrong hands, and or a poor level of service given to edge case customers, right? But that's I think it will be a steep learning curve, but one that I think will deliver some amazing things.
It does remind me of like also the year 2000 and the dot-com kind of boom, which is kind of like it's like people are on the ground floor and they're developing all sorts of weird and wacky kind of ideas. But if you were there and if you were part of it, you also got the knowledge to then sort of take that on to become the next Amazon or whoever it was, right? I mean, some of the very big companies, some of the biggest companies like Facebook, and it feels like it's sort of like getting in on the ground floor is important, but a lot of it will sort of change as we learn, right? But you need to learn as well, so it's like the trialing piece is kind of important.
Yeah, exactly. Adoption is important, but also kind of being careful with how you embed it into your business is crucial. One of the big things that we're concerned about is the unit cost of our AI spend. And basic economics say that if it is delivering a labor arbitrage, if it's saving you 90% on labor cost, the likelihood is the cost of AI is going to somewhere match the cost of labor at some point, right? And so I think that's the thing that we've all got to be careful about is we are beholden on someone else's rate card. And if that changes dramatically, we can't deliver a service at a commercial value.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I've become very sensitive to API costs, which is kind of like, I never thought I'd say that, but it was model API costs for AI, and one of them they changed their model and they basically cancelled one of the old models and it went up by it's a factor of 5, I think it was, and I got really quite upset about that. So you're then sort of like looking for alternatives, and I think the question's really around, well, do you go with sort of the top of range expensive one, which is what everyone's trying to tend towards? Do you really need that, or can you just manage with one of these cheaper ones, or even a local one as well, right? So I mean, a lot of people use local ones. If you've got they're pretty good, right?
I'll take your word for it. I rely heavily on my head of tech for all those kind of good things.
So where do you think we go with that kind of stuff? I mean, obviously businesses are trying to reinvent themselves and look at things. I mean, there's also if you've got legacy, technical debt, I suppose, then it becomes harder than if it becomes a plug-in versus just reinventing yourselves. I mean, what do you sort of see the world kind of looking at? I mean, I suppose, and you're in a nice position of sort of, being fresh and being able to design some of that stuff. I mean, where do you think the world's going to go? And I suppose, how do you make sure that you stay ahead on some of this?
Yeah, that is a difficult question to answer it in whole. But where in terms of how we can serve our customers or our lending partners, it is all around how we can connect into their legacy systems. We're in this transitionary phase, arguably one that we will always be in a transitionary phase from it's existing systems into now this new AI enabled, but then the next thing the next thing will follow. But ultimately we are living in a kind of in a partner ecosystem now where rarely is any one service delivered by an in-house a wholly in-house solution. And so the way we see it is how do we make our solution as easy to work with as possible from a technology standpoint, and how do we make sure that we can do that in a way that is cost efficient and we can and also kind of like the security aspect to this is something that, again, I know that we've seen some high profile kind of cases on this, but it's going to become more and more important around ensuring customer information that we capture is securely shared in a way that is both looked at, is both covered by customer consent, and also then what actually happens to it after maybe the 7-year period expires and all these kind of good things, and and what are the unintended consequences of putting it into certain data models and all these kind of things. I think is an interesting challenge that we're gonna have to face. But for me, the big kind of hurdle for us to get over is making it a tool that we're able to adapt to various different technology environments, so that actually we're able to serve as many lending partners and as many kind of corporate partners as we possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's trying to build that flexibility in up front, isn't it, as much as you possibly can, so you can then adapt as it then and adopt new techniques as and when they come through, really. So
exactly.
Well, Rob, thanks very much for making the time. I think it's fascinating, particularly the piece around data and just this enrichment of data and how that's changing. Really, you can see it changing around us, right? And you can even the API costs piece is like a function of that as well, which is we're just able to handle so much more data, and we almost we're craving for more data as well, which is I think is fascinating. So really appreciate making the time, and it's a fascinating kind of concept as well.
No, great stuff. Happy to hop on, Chris.
Thanks very much.